Good morning, beautiful people. Hey, hi, Scout. This is a bit of an impromptu live. I will be doing a live tonight, Australian Eastern Standard Time, possibly about 7 p.m. But I just wanted to bounce around a theory that I keep going back to, and I'm definitely not stating this as, plausible. It is just a theory based on the facts that we know, and we know that we know very little. But there's been a few things with the Idaho 4 murders that have been said that have stuck out to me, but they're not really things other people seem to be talking about a lot. Firstly, I want to acknowledge and pay respect to the 4 victims, Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle. This channel is where facts and victims matter, and really that's all we discuss here. But I have mentioned in the past, talking about this, that my hinky meter hasn't really been spinning like it does sometimes with other cases, and I think that's partly because in my lifetime I can't recall another case like it. It's just so unfathomably brutal and horrific, and like we've said many times on this channel, it's like something out of a horror movie, and that's where my thoughts have kept going. Hey, a blank slate, great name, how are you? So this live, I know that audio and everything will probably be a bit average. I am about to drive to work. For anyone that comes in who's new to my channel, I am a lawyer. I was previously a criminal defence lawyer, but now I'm working in more sort of human and workers' rights areas of law, which explains my fascination with true crime from a very young age. I had a criminal barrister father, and other family members, including my siblings, with law degrees too. Family trade, I guess. So this live is really just to point out some of the things that have stuck out to me. Also, just so you know, I know everyone's got theories, but if there are people mentioned in chat that have been not cleared by the police, but it's been said they're not considered relevant to the crime, I'm not entertaining this stuff, guys. I'm just putting that out there now. You don't need to block them or anything like that, Scout. But just so people know, this is a theory I have, and it's we know we've only got between 5 and maybe 10% of the information the police have. And again, I'm not saying this is the theory or the truth of what actually happened. This is just me looking at this case from the other side of the world and looking at the facts that we know, which we know are very little. And I just think that some of the stuff that's being discussed sort of makes sense, which is why I've got this theory. Could be proven to be incredibly wrong, but I thought it'd be worth discussing because, yeah, we do have enough facts to have a conversation. So I'm going to head to work. Again, apologies in advance. The audio is going to be a bit patchy in and out because I'm driving on highways and stuff. Nothing like the highways in other parts of the world. I live on a very small island at the bottom of Australia with only 500,000 people living on it. And yeah, caps are great. Thank you for that reminder too, Scout. So over the last couple of weeks in particular, I've started researching cases in America that have been unsolved, cases that have, or crimes that have occurred on the 13th, and recent Netflix shows, movies, TV shows, etc., regarding serial killers. And to be honest, like, to do with this case at all. That's the nature of me. I start researching and I end up on a completely different trajectory, and I've learnt a lot about crimes that have happened in America I'd never even heard of before, and other parts of the world. Right from the start with this, the questions and the chatter of the sleuths, and I am not for a second sleuthing this. This is just a theory based on what we know so far. And it was partly triggered for me to go live this morning, and I'll do the proper live tonight, by the independent article that I read this morning with Kaylee Goncalves' dad allegedly giving more information out about the nature of her horrific injury. I'm not going to go into detail about that. You guys can easily Google it, research it. There's plenty of other flurry this morning, so I wasn't able to bounce around much, but it was very apparent from the start that whoever did this had to be incredibly strong. And we've used the word swift and brutal plenty of times in discussing this case on this channel, because all of that mindless chatter of the sleuths, as much as I think logically you can answer all of their questions, some of their questions could be easily answered if they looked at it from a logical perspective and not what they think is reasonable. I hope they find who did it too, a blank slate, but my hunch has been from the start as well that whoever did it is long gone from Moscow, Idaho. Now, it is going to be the 13th in Australia. Well, it's the 13th today, weirdly, because we're ahead of you guys, but for you guys, tomorrow will be the 13th. I'm not saying, I'm not a psychic, I'm not predicting a murder's going to happen tomorrow, but to say that my pinky meter isn't a little bit long, like, woo! We've got the 13th rolling around again, and the 13th is significant with this horror movie killer theory because of Friday the 13th. Not that the crime in Idaho occurred on Friday, but Friday the 13th is one of the horror movies that sticks out to me because of the facts that we know about this case. It happened on the 13th. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Now, I'm not a massive horror movie genre fan. As a kid, or young teen, I was fascinated by horror movies like The Exorcist, The Omen, that sort of stuff. But I'd also go to movies like The Howling and have nightmares for weeks, or vampire movies. I'd visualise vampires standing outside my bedroom window. Not a massive fan of this genre. And there's probably a lot of people that follow horror movies, and even in our community, that know more about them. So I'm kind of hoping, if there are, you guys can assist with some research for me. But one of the things that has also stood out right from the start with me, which again is responding to the mindless chatter of the fact-ignoring sleuths, is seeing them even now saying the killer had to know them. There's no way this was a stranger. I get unbelievably, if they truly are into crime, and I'm not using the word true anymore because they've absolutely smeared the name true crime. They are far from it. They're true sleuthers, and I'm being kind. But I repeatedly see and hear people saying they had to have known them. The victims had to have known the killer. Well, I'm sorry, but Ted Bundy didn't know his victims, and Ted Bundy murdered 6 girls in a dorm, a university dormitory. And there's been a lot of TV shows. Netflix had the Ted Bundy show with Zac Efron in it, which for some reason I think had a different name in Australia to the US. And I've thought from the start, is this murderer, does he idolise, and I believe it's a he, because I think that the fact that the other kids in that house didn't wake up was because it was swift and brutal. And, well, if the information Kaylee Goncalves' dad's put out, it explains also, which we've also discussed on this channel a lot, about how stabbings can be silent murders. But I do kind of wonder, is this guy obsessed with horror movies? Because it is a real-life horror movie. These murders are a real-life horror movie. Is this guy obsessed with horror movies and serial killers? Because even if you want to say, all right, well, he's not emulating Ted Bundy, then Richard Speck, another person who killed college students that he didn't know. And I wonder why these sleuths keep going, well, the victims had to have known him. Why? There's plenty of horrible, horrible stories of numerous murders committed in one night by a stranger to the victims. Anyone who follows crime knows about serial killers. Is this person involved in the Idaho 4 murders a serial killer? I don't know. I guess we're going to find out, unfortunately. But the other thing with these murders, and it is a real-life horror show, and the little bits of information that keep trickling out are just, in my opinion, pointing more and more to the fact that the perpetrator is somebody that wasn't actually connected to the kids. Is it would have been planned? Because the lack of a blood trail to me is, and it's easily explained with logic. Again, this is all theory. It's not actually speculation. It's a theory based on facts. Picture this. The guy has been watching that house, and remind me, Scout, if I forget, I want to talk about the house too. He's chosen that house. He's going to commit murder in that house. It's planned. He gets to the house. He's got a bag with him with his knife in it, and also potentially like full-on coveralls, including the boot part of it, or like a lightweight hazmat waterproof sort of suit type thing, and a mask. Goes in and does it while still in the house, takes all of that stuff off and shoves it in his bag, and potentially doesn't even have boots or anything on at that point. They might be out on the porch that he puts on before he walks back into the woods or down the road to get in a car or whatever. No trail. Hi, Scout. Oh, sorry, Kim, hi. It breaks my heart too. It's absolutely horrific. Absolutely horrific. I've never thought that a 20 or 21-year-old wimpy little college student would have been capable of doing something this vicious. Never. As you guys know, I haven't entertained any theories or speculation about Woody Guy or Kaylee's ex. I honestly have never felt that they would be capable of this brutality and rage and strength. Without getting too graphic, I heard an expert discussing the physicality of stabbing one person and how quickly you're drained of energy. For this person to have been able to do it to 4 kids, some of whom had defence wounds, so unfortunately makes me terribly sad, but they were very aware of what was going on. Your energy gets depleted significantly just attacking and stabbing one person to death, let alone 4. This person had to be incredibly strong. And I'm sorry, but wimpy little arts students, little college students, 20-year-old, 21-year-old boys studying humanities type, and I don't actually know what they were studying, but, you know, unless they were there on a sports scholarship and ultra fit weightlifters, they're not going to have the strength or the energy to brutally slaughter 4 people, including people who fought back, potentially. I am struggling to find who actually had defence wounds and where that's been verified. Doesn't mean it hasn't been already. It's just not on my list of things that I've been able to verify to stick to the facts here out of respect to the victims. I agree, Kim. I think it's someone we hadn't heard of yet. Yeah, look, adrenaline for sure, but the guy that was talking about how physically draining stabbing someone is did factor in adrenaline, and the adrenaline was definitely there for the first victim. But when your body's actually starting to become physically exhausted, the adrenaline's dissipating as well, I think he said. There's probably a scientific explanation for it, but he basically said you couldn't have that sort of adrenaline to do it 4 times because you become very exhausted with each killing. God, I hate talking about this without having to use those words. Jen Lu. Yeah, I don't think it's anyone they know personally, and I'm certainly not until further notice, you know, unless a fact comes out that starts connecting the dots to someone they do know. That's why this theory is based on what we know so far, and there's no suspect or person of interest. So why is that, you know? Yeah, no, but Kim, it's a valid point. Like, adrenaline would definitely be at play. But I recall this guy saying that after a period of time, because your body, I don't know, is there anyone with a medical degree in my chat? As your body becomes exhausted, your body produces less adrenaline. And that's very simplistic terms, I think. That's Tori got no clue about medicine terms. Okay, so horror movies and connections. So it happened on the 13th, may or may not be relevant. It wasn't a Friday, obviously, but Friday the 13th. Talked about how Ted Bundy's been, I'm trying to think of the word. The word in my brain I can't use because it's not appropriate. Emulated, I don't think so, Tori. But there's been TV shows and stuff about Ted Bundy. Then you look at movies like Scream that were actually inspired by a real-life serial killer. And I did take notes at home, and I apologise because for some reason I can't think of his surname, but he was the Gainesville Ripper, and I know his name was Danny. I've got J.K. Rowling in my head. Is it Danny Rowling? Something like that. Oh, your theory too. Yeah. Excellent, Jem. We're on the same page. Not surprisingly. I'm going to be live tonight, but I reckon it'll be like crazy AM for you, and you may not be around, but I'd love to nut this out with you, because I too have felt that way. We've really only talked about the facts here, as you know, that's all we do. But the facts we've got is this was a real life horror movie right from the start. Right from the start. The second I heard 4 people murdered, I'm like, holy shit, in one house. A slender, and I don't know the movie you're talking about, Jen, so I'd really love to do a panel with you. I'm not surprised we're on the Daniel Rowling. Thank you. That was so weird. I lost his surname in my brain because I've been researching horror movies, unsolved murders in America, unsolved murders committed on the 13th, and then his surname disappeared, and then I had Harry Potter in my vision. I was like, J.K. Rowling, is it Rowling? Thank you for confirming that. Stop animal cruelty, and good to see you, beautiful. This crime reminds me of a Terry Lynn Sells murder set. I don't know that either. All right, we're going to be having some panel discussions. I really want to do one with you, Jen Lou, and anyone else who wants to jump up as well. And like I said, this is a theory based entirely on the facts we know so far. I'm not saying this is the thing, that this is accurate. It just makes way more sense to me with the information we've got than all these other sleuthing channels that are just honing in on the hoodie guy over and over and over again. There's a reason the cops very quickly said they don't consider him connected to the crime. And 4 weeks later, we've still got numerous channels and people in chats and comments pointing the finger at a hoodie guy whose identification still hasn't been verified by any credible sources. Everyone's just gone with this name that got put out on a really dodgy forum, I might add. No official source has actually verified who Hoodie Guy is. And all the people who are saying who Hoodie Guy is are running from an unverified source. Dangerous? Very. I do apologise, the audio is average in my car, but I wanted to just talk about this based on the fact that I saw very briefly before heading to my car to go to work that Kaylee Goncalves' father has put more detail out there. And look, it's disgusting and graphic and horrific, but it's not surprising because that's what I was already visualising. When all these people were saying, how come the housemates didn't hear anything? Think about it logically, and we have talked about logically why the housemates didn't hear anything. And unfortunately, if that information he's put out is true, that's what we talked about. We talked about why there wouldn't have been screams. I love you, stop animal cruelty. Same with the dog. If I hit one more person, why didn't the dog bark? Here's the thing, Murphy, little Murphy Pants, lived in a party house. That dog has been in a house full of college students partying their butts off its entire life. People moving around in that house would not be a noise that would automatically freak that dog out. If Murphy was in Kaylee's allegedly empty bedroom, it's quite possible Murphy was in there with the door closed, sound asleep. Murphy might have had a bed in there and a bowl of water and some food. Who knows? Some puppy pad, those puppy mats on the floor. Again, this is me just putting logic into play here. The girls have come home piss-faced, shit-faced, pissed as farts, eating food downstairs, all the noises this dog would be used to. You've got a person that comes into the house and is walking around and capable of slaughtering 4 people in a manner that is, as confirmed by experts over and over again discussing this case, silent or very quiet. Even if Ethan, for example, heard a noise and came out of his room, unfortunately giving the killer access to him and Xana, and they were relatively silent as well, do you think the dog upstairs in the room above would automatically be on high alert and start barking? Might have been sound asleep. I was a college student with pets, and my pets, when we had a party, went to the quietest place in the house and went to sleep. They ignored the crap out of us. They weren't hanging out with us. And that's the other thing, Kim, with the people that keep going on about, why didn't the housemates hear anything? Someone who actually lived in that house, who knows way more about living in that house than any of these online sleuths, said when you were down on that bottom level where the two surviving housemates were, you couldn't hear a thing going on upstairs. He actually said, unless the TV was up really loud in the living room, you might hear that, but other than that, the rooms downstairs were unbelievably quiet. He lived there. The dog could have been crated and just curled up asleep going, oh shit, we've got another party going on, there's people in the house, the girls are back, they're in the kitchen eating their food, chattering away, there might have been music playing. Nothing unusual for Murphy. But Murphy wasn't the reason I gone down the Murphy road, but that wasn't really where I was heading, back to this horror movie serial killer concept. I will be at the car park for about half an hour at the end of this live, where we'll be able to have a really good chat, as some of you know. Just bear with me as we head into Hobart Town, Tasmania. So yeah, I've gone down incredible rabbit warrens about unsolved American cases. Holy shit, and we're talking like I've got back to the 1800s. I'm learning a lot. I've also learned a lot about horror movie copycat killers in other parts of the world, Europe, Asia. It's a bit of a thing. But one of the things I do want to talk about, but I'm going to wait till we get to the car park because I know my audio is usually pretty average at this part of the road, just because I'm on a freeway. There is one verified bit of information. No, well, it is verified. It was stated that stuck out to me and made me go down this serial killer road. So I want to talk about that when we're at the car park. And it's something the police have said that not many people have really honed in on. And yet for me, it was like, what an unusual thing to say. But if you look at it from a horror movie context, it makes a lot of sense. My feeling has been from the start that the killer's long gone from Moscow, Idaho. The reason I did a short little video on the arrest of James Curtis Leonard wasn't to say that he was responsible, and I know that he's not, and I don't say in my video that he is. What I found interesting was, though, was that a guy that was arrested ticked way more boxes. If these sleuths were going to be talking about who did it, he definitely fit the mould or the criteria for who was capable of doing so. And I'm not saying, like I said, please understand, I know this guy's cleared, but where it was relevant was the sleuths are honing in on these 20-year-old, 20-something college boys, and I've never felt that someone of that age, especially if they were studying like humanities and stuff, bless them, I dated a lot of those boys, would be capable of something this graphic and brutal and requiring such strength and energy. But someone who does get arrested in Moscow, Idaho, where it was relevant was it's that kind of person, bit older, stronger, possibly has already committed some crimes, not necessarily murder, but that James Leonard had. That's more who I visualised, I guess. Not him personally, but that sort of descriptor. Not kids hanging around a food truck with other college kids. And when I was at college, a college student murdered another student, and it was a horrible murder, but it was very bungled, and it was because of how inept this kid was and how he lacked the strength. It's a murder of a girl called Alison Nitschke, if anyone wants to Google it, in South Australia. But the facts of her murder, he tried to kill her and he thought he had, and she regained consciousness. So he had to do it again. And he was a young, private school educated, now university student, doing a humanities kind of course. There is no way he could have wiped out 4 people quickly and brutally and silently. Doesn't mean there aren't kids at uni and college that are capable of that, but I would be very surprised if and when the perpetrator's caught that they were a college kid. Oh God, and that bloody AWP thing has now reignited all the Kylie sleuths. They're all firing up about it again. Unbelievable, they can't let that girl rest in peace. And her family and friends just... It ties in with what my live was about yesterday, how it's very obvious that a lot of people that now describe themselves as being into true crime, for some reason, the true part of it doesn't seem to come into play because they are acting like they're watching TV shows and movies, weirdly, just with the serial killer movies and so on. I do think there's a connection. That's based on what we know so far, the facts, the tiny bit of facts we've got, 5 or 10%. But when you're discussing facts and coming up with a theory based on those facts and what we know so far, even it's going to go cold, the police are inept, it's taking so long. That's all coming out of the mouths of people who think this is a movie or a TV show, with absolutely no regard to the fact that this is real life. 4 people lost their lives. So many people who knew and loved them are absolutely devastated right now. It isn't an episode of CSI. It's not going to get solved in 1 hour. It's not going to get solved in 1 month. Yes, some cases are solved very quickly, like the horrific murder of Xana Strand. And thank God that was. But I think the person who did this planned it so thoroughly that they factored in absolutely everything. They considered every element, including how they could get out of there, not leave a blood trail. If you're in a full, those sort of like, they look like a hazmat suit, but they're like a disposable, waterproof, like full-on coveralls, head to toe, that you have to put on when you go and visit someone in hospital, when they're in like a, ICU or in a ward where you've got to basically be fully geared up. They might have like staph infection, that sort of stuff. I only know about these because I had to put one on when I went to see my dad many times when he was in hospital. You've got something like that on. No boots, like just underneath you've just got your jeans and top and socks. Your boots are out on the porch or near whatever door you're going to escape out of the house from. You potentially have a mask covering your face as well. And again, there's that horror movie serial killer hinky meter spinning. You're still in the house and you take all that gear off, chuck the knife in the bag as well, and outside you've got your coat and your boots. Put them on, gone. Doesn't that make sense? I think whoever did this planned this very thoroughly. Even escape-wise, they had a full tank of petrol and they were out of there. Hey, Joman. Oh, thank you, Scout. Gosh, you're on the ball. So, yeah, research-wise, and when we get to the car park, I do want to go over one of the things that has stood out to me as the most significant fact in this little theory of not just mine, but Jen Lou's as well. And I imagine many people who are theorising based on the facts alone. It's the most plausible theory I can come up. My hinky meter still isn't going like crazy, but I have been writing so many notes. Like I've been not at work, thank God. I've been focusing on work. I've been so busy. But when I'm at home, I'm walking around the house with a little notepad and pen. Like I actually put an apron on when I went down to do some gardening the other day with a pen and notepad in the pocket of the apron so that I could make notes. I've been writing so many, and like I said, I'm not big on horror movies. There are probably gazillions of horror movies that you guys are automatically going, wow, it's a bit reminiscent of this movie too. Like, I swear to God, guys, if a murder occurs in America in the next 6 months that's reminiscent of another horror movie or similar to this one, a real-life horror movie, I won't be surprised, unfortunately. Oh, yeah, no, the Xana strand, I think everyone's now going to be... I mean, look, there's amazing delivery drivers out there, but I can understand why people, especially people that live in remote properties and stuff, why they might be very wary now. Where I live, you've got the option of having a letterbox or having your mail delivered to the post office, including your packages and stuff, because we're an old-fashioned little coastal country town. And so that's where my mail gets delivered and packages. Occasionally something I order gets delivered to my house, but it just gets left on the front landing. So I don't have a phobia of delivery drivers, but I understand why people would. But also a big shout out to all the amazing delivery drivers out there who would never harm a fly. That dude was a bad apple. There's no doubt about it. I wish they'd solved the William Tyrrell case too. That poor little boy. Unfortunately, when they bumped his reward up to $1 million, it didn't bring about a speedy outcome like Toy Accordingly's case, where the reward was bumped up to $1 million and suddenly the culprit who'd fled Australia was caught. Sometimes a reward can bring about a very stunning result, and it totally takes advantage of humans' greed. And to be honest, I don't care what it takes. If it leads to the arrest and conviction of a culprit, offer as much money as you want. Unfortunately, we have to sometimes pitch to things like greed to get a result. And I'm all for it. It could happen to Blank Slate because I think whoever did this has covered their tracks incredibly well. This person isn't like Chris Watts, who planned the murders but didn't plan the aftermath of them. At all well. Hey, Michelle P., how are you, group? Haven't seen you forever. Okay, we'll have a bit of a chat before I head into work. So I'm just going to line up my car a bit more, a bit closer to the other car, sort of slightly overhanging this other dude's park. So this live is preempting a live that I'm going to do later when I'm at home. I'm going to do it tonight. It will be Australian Eastern Standard Time, about 7 or 8 p.m. So many of you will be asleep, unfortunately. But from the start with this, I've been busy too. The crazy pre-Christmas shenanigans. With a lot of cases, I have a hinky meter that spins like crazy. My hinky meter on this one has been whirring slowly in the background, but it hasn't been like ring-a-ding-dinging, if you know what I mean. And part of my reasoning with this theory, the reason my hinky meter hasn't been going absolutely nuts is because this is the first case in my lifetime that I've followed that has been so brutal and graphic. It's nothing like anything I've ever followed before, or many of us. Thank God. And again, I'm doing this out of, like, I'm acknowledging and respecting the victims. Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. Because at Smooth Criminal, we focus on facts and victims, and that's it. And it's okay to come up with a theory based on the facts that we know. But the other thing is, my theory on this is directly connected to horror movies, and it's not a genre I follow really closely. But I can't help but think there's a connection. This is a real-life horror slasher film. And I think whoever did this is obsessed with horror movies. And I've got to try and get my brain into someone who's obsessed with horror movies. And that's where I'm asking you guys to help me research. Like, are there more horror movies? I know Jen Lou mentioned one earlier. I'm certainly going to look into that. I'd really love to do a panel with Jen because she has a similar theory, interestingly, and I'm not surprised. We're definitely sisters from different misters, no doubt about it. And she too focuses in on facts, and all this never-ending chatter on these sleuthing channels has confused a lot of people, but I keep going back to the facts that have been verified and looking at them and trying to put that puzzle piece into a theory. And I'm at a point where I feel that there's enough connectors now. Oh, video games. Hi, Sarah. Didn't even think of that. We'll definitely do lots of panels. Well, okay, Michelle, that's an interesting point. The group, and this is where my horror movie theory, I think one of the most crucial facts we've got, which a lot of people aren't really commenting on except to say that it confused them. I feel like it was a group as well, and any group, but they just happened to be unfortunately, the group that this person targeted. Remember when the cops said initially that they thought it was a targeted attack? So everyone started trying to work out which person in the house was targeted. I feel that targeted can mean a lot of things. I do get a vibe, and this is not a comment based on any facts we've got because we haven't been told much about the actual crime scene. I do get a vibe that whoever did this wrote something in blood on a wall. Again, horror movie connection. But then the police changed that statement and they said something that I think is really important here. And they said that they thought the house was targeted. Jamin, when I say, did I say I feel? It's a theory. So yeah, I feel things based on the facts to come up with this theory. I'm saying I think a lot too. Is that what you're asking? The theory is based on the facts, and I have feelings about the facts and putting them together like a little puzzle and being mindful that we've only got 5 or 10% of the information the cops have got. But let's stick to the fact that I think is really critical in this, is the police changing their statement to say they thought the house was targeted. Well, when I do my live tonight, because like I said, this is a live just putting the theory out there and preempting a proper live I'll be doing later when we do look at the facts we've got. And why at the moment connecting those facts, the most logical theory I can come up with is this is a possible serial killer with an infatuation with horror movies. Why did the cops say they thought the house was targeted rather than an individual? And then they backtracked that on that again, which has confused people as well. But the house, if this is a horror movie obsessed serial killer, possibly inspired by the murders Ted Bundy committed in a dormitory, or Richard Speck, you'd go to a college town for starters. If you're planning on doing something horrific like this to university students, it makes logical sense. A sleepy little town of 25,000 people is probably way more appealing than heading to like a university campus in New York City for obvious reasons. I'm hoping it'll be about 7 or 8 p.m. tonight, Australian Eastern Standard Time, Jen. But weirdly, this weekend, I've managed to keep it relatively clear because of the impending Christmas weekend. And I'm also off work for a few days this week, so I could do lives during your time as well. Yeah, Copycat. So the house. All right, let's think a bit more about the house. Well, if he's been walking around at night looking into houses, that's a pretty good one to watch because they didn't have curtains and blinds. He may have watched them for a long time and established their sort of patterns, going out on weekends, coming home, eating food, heading off to their bedrooms. He might have even somehow been present at a party or something and already knew what the house was like inside. But another twist with the house too, when they said they thought the house was targeted. Do any of you think it's interesting? And this is probably a massive stretch, but for some reason I keep going back to it. The fact that the house number was 1122, November 2022, 1122. And the murders were committed on the 13th. Do you see what I'm saying? Could be a complete fluke, but isn't it weird that the house number is the month and year the murders were committed? Like, is he that switched on, or is that a coincidence? Don't know. But the thing that is a fact is the cops said they shifted from it's a targeted attack to the house was targeted. A house full of college students. Interesting, huh? What state are you in, Jen? You don't need to say town or anything like that, and I'll world clock it and make sure that when I go live tonight, you'll be awake. Oh, God, I know Humanimal. I only saw that really briefly yesterday, and I'm like, wow, what the hell? Haven't gone down that road yet. How are you, Humanimal? You thought it too. 11/22 on the 13th, and that's that horror movie connection, Friday the 13th. You're talking about the fire stick juggler. Who's the fire? Is that the Anan Harsh? Oh, that's just what this story needs. Plot twist: a fire stick juggler. I did feel very early on that this person had got the hell out of Moscow very quickly. It's the perfect little town, though, perfect little college town to go to if you are trying to emulate your serial killer horror movie heroes. You're counting on things like being in a town that's got a very small, inexperienced police force. That's going to buy you time to get the hell out of there before the FBI and everyone else rolls in. The Wonderland murders. Oh my God, we so have to talk because you, Jen Lou, clearly, right, Florida, okay, groovy. I'll make sure that I'll do it as late as I can without me falling asleep, but late enough that you'll be awake time. Will you be awake at like 7 or 8 in the morning? Are you an early bird? I feel the perp has watched so many horror movies and idolizes people like Ted Bundy and Richard Speck. I think these were incredibly planned. I don't know if he specifically looked for the 1122 house number, whether that's just a crazy coincidence. But the fact the cops said they shifted their statement to say they believe the house was targeted, that's something I've been constantly mulling over this whole time. And a lot of people have said, oh, the cops are a net because the first they said someone was targeted, then they said the house. And I'm like, yeah, it probably is a bit confusing for people, but why isn't anyone wondering? How often have you heard about a crime where the cops say publicly that they believe a house was targeted? Not the occupants, the house. Got to put some makeups on, Groovers. It's food for thought. And again, I know Joman said before about you're an early bird. See, we're sisters from different misters. I was wide awake at 5 to 5 this morning. I think Bundy committed the dorm murders at 3 a.m. too, for some reason. I've watched a lot of Ted Bundy stuff. I've got a feeling, you think about it, like 3 a.m. is the dark of night. That's when people are like sound asleep. Oh, great, Sarah. Cool, because it'd be cool to discuss the video game angle too. As long as it's based on the facts we've got. If you know of a video game that's like this, for sure. Yeah, never on a house. It's odd, isn't it? And then you think of, 3 a.m. is the witching hour. Yeah, Jen Lu. I thought of Manson as well. They targeted the house. And the people that just happened to be there that night, some are gory. Only target I know because of the house is the Watcher. But then you think of like horror movies, like say the Amityville Horror, like it's a murder and a movie based on the house. And, then I go back to, is 11/22 significant? November 2022, is that just a fluke? Or is this person that shrewd that they were like, I'm going to kill people on the 13th of November this year? And that was deliberately targeted for that reason. I mean, it's weird. It's not weird, it's interesting. But before, when Joman was mentioning I feel and I think, yeah, it's a theory that I feel and think about based on facts. Let me reiterate that. It's just all this mindless chatter online about the hoodie guy. The cops very quickly went, we don't think that person's connected. And you've got so many channels going on and on about Jack S. His identity, the hoodie guy's identity, has never been verified by a credible source either. It was put out on this forum that is really weird. And this is weird. Like, it's a really shonky, bad graphics forum, and it's nothing like the size of Reddit. It's this weird little forum I didn't even know existed. Checking my notes to see if there's anyone else. Could they also be a bit obsessed with the Zodiac Killer, who had a pattern? Where do I like? Hit that like button. I don't know. What do you mean? Where do I like? Hit that thumb up. I think, is that something that, did you see Scout say hit the like, put your DNA on the like button or something? Is that what that is about? Yeah, and what happened in that house crime scene, I think, is critical. Because we know they know more than we do, which makes me think there was something in the crime scene that made them at one point say they believed the house was targeted. Food for thought. And the 11/22 thing, it is a fact the house is 11/22. Is it relevant? Who knows? But it's kind of eerie if it is. Well, if it was deliberate, is this person that switched on? I reckon they've planned this for a long time. It's not unlikely. They were really slashed. And we said that from the start. This is a real life horror movie. These people were slashed. Like, they did not have a chance to scream out. I'm not surprised other people in the house didn't wake up. I'm not surprised the dog didn't react. I've wondered that too, Michelle. I also wonder if the doors having those locks on them might have thrown him. Like, if that was something that he hadn't factored in, and that Haley and Maddie had the door open, because if you look at, for example, Gray Hughes, when he's going through the house, and even that floor plan that was first put out, Maddie's room was really small. And my bedroom isn't really small, but I still have my bedroom door open because I like feeling like I've got fresh air coming in. I can hear what's going on in the rest of the house, and I don't like a door being closed. It's claustrophobic to me, especially if there's someone else in my bed with me. Well, you can have Humanimal because our theory is based on the facts we've got. This theory of it being a targeted house is a fact. The cops said that at one point. Thank you so much for coming in, Sarah. Sarah, I should say Sarah. I pronounce your name Sarah, but you might pronounce it Sarah. I know Sarah's who spell it without the H, but I also know Sarah's without the H. So the serial killer horror movie theory is, it hinges on fantasy, that this person was obsessed with that stuff and had that fantasy and they've acted it out. I agree it would have been a beacon. And if he decides he's going to do a campus murder of sorts and he rolls into Moscow and there's all this off-campus housing and one of the houses doesn't have curtains and blinds and he's able to watch what goes on in that house and establish all of their patterns when they're at work, when they're at college, when they're partying. But, those little keypads on the doors might have been something that wasn't factored in, and it's quite possible that Maddie and Kaylee had their door open, and then he was a bit stumped. He goes in and he's like, Ethan and Xana's door's shut with that keypad thing, but as luck would have it, upstairs there's a door open. And then is it possible that Ethan heard something and came out, and that's how he got access to both of them? And he may not have even factored the ground floor where the other girls were, or he might have been aware that they had a keypad as well. We don't know much about that. But a lot of people have been saying that those keypads, you obviously need a code to get into those rooms. If you don't know them, Michelle, yeah, my theory is that Murphy probably was sleeping in Kaylee's empty room and the door might have been closed, but also that dog grew up in a party house and people moving around in the house at that hour of the night wasn't weird. The girls were still awake at, 1:45, based on the phone logs. Most murders of this caliber have an element of fantasy to them. One person whose sole motive was murder to do it to 4 kids in their prime, especially one of them being male. Yeah, no, you've got to wonder if the keypad stumped him. That was something he hadn't been able to factor into his plan, because he probably wouldn't have been able to see any keypad door locky things until he was actually in the house. When you look at how you get up to the rooms and everything, it's not like they would have necessarily been visible from is it possible? I can't remember from Gray's thing. Is it possible if you're in the kitchen, you can see down the hallway to Xana's room where Xana and Ethan were, and he would have seen the keypad, and then he's like, oh, shit, let's try upstairs. And, did he plan to wipe out everyone in the house and the keypads weren't factored in? And Ethan woke up and that's how that door became open and he was able to get to him and to Xana. Got to do some makeup. Okay, it's theory based on what we know. And when I do the live where we actually go through the facts that we know, we can go through each individual fact that's been verified and see if it connects to this theory. If there's a logical explanation and how it fits into the theory. I agree, this person likely was able to blend, but not familiar enough to know the intimate details of the home. Okay, yeah, Xana's room tucked away. Which, again, you know, if Ethan heard noises and went out to see what the hell was going on, he might have been going to get a glass of water from the kitchen. Like, we don't know. But that would explain how he had access to Ethan and Xana. That's interesting too. There's always a survivor. One may speculate based on that a gun was not used, that the perpetrators wanted to be silent, slip in and out, suggesting this was not by someone depressed. Agree, Joman, agree. Absolutely. On the silent thing, yep, because stabbings are very silent, especially if they're slashing as well. It's very easy to debilitate a human being with a knife with the first blow or swipe so that they can't make a noise. There's plenty of experts talking about that online, and there's lots of articles, and it's a known fact. A gun, obviously, not ideal. And also, I agree, I don't think this person was depressed at all. I think this person's an absolute psychopath and had a thirst for this violence. This wasn't the my life is a mess, I'm going to take out a heap of people kind of scenario at all. I know it's going to be great, Jen. I'm looking forward to it. He's there to kill people. Why lock up the dog? Well, I think that it's possible that they just put that was Murphy's room. You know, Kaylee had moved out. She had Murphy with her. She would have had his bed and food and water bowl. They were going to have a Saturday night, bit of a party. They probably set everything up in that room, and that's where Murphy was. It was quiet, away from all the noise when they came home and eating in the kitchen and the food and everything. Or Murphy might have been with them, and then when they went upstairs, they popped Murphy in that room and closed the door. Or, like you said, I mean, the killer, that Murphy might have been on the third floor just cruising around, and he just, I don't know. But I don't know. I've never thought Murphy not barking is an indicator that Murphy knew who it was. I kind of feel Murphy was clueless what was going on, because Murphy may have been in that room with the door shut and was just asleep. I know, that's why a panel will be good. It's a theory that makes more sense than all of these honing in on the hoodie guy and talking about it for days on end, when the cops have said at the moment they don't consider hoodie guy to be connected, and numerous other people too, including the other housemates. So all these people chattering away, talking about all of them being the culprits. It's like, well, as soon as the cops said that, they were not on my radar at all. I'm just looking at the facts. Thrill kill. A knife is very personal, but it's also very effective. Like, it's not uncommon for crimes of passion to involve a knife for that very reason, same as strangulation, because you're looking straight into your victim's face. But it's also a very effective, swift and brutal way to wipe people out too. Especially if you're planning on wiping a lot of people out. That's a good point too, stop animal cruelty. But I think he's into the slasher horror movie genre. Me too. It was planned for sure. Right down to getting out of there too, quickly. Like even to having a full car, like a full tank of petrol, everything. Yeah, there's an obsession and a determination to do it for sure. Well, yeah, because the experts talking about how physically draining just stabbing one person is, that as it went on, that person would have been, even though they're in rage and they've got this obsessive idea and everything else and adrenaline throwing through their veins, every stabbing drains you significantly. I heard a specialist say that exact phrase. Kez Chick 56, g'day Groover, welcome. So they'll be alive tonight. I'm going to get Jen Lou up on panel because Jen Lou is way more into horror movies than I am, and has mentioned who I've never even heard of. And if this person is horror movie serial killer obsessed, then, you know, Zodiac to this day, unsolved, but also chose a pattern for the murders. Is this person thinking along the same lines, you know? Look, the last thing I want is for another horror movie type murder to happen. But if one does, holy fuck. And is it going to be the same as this? Is it going to be a mirror, or is it going to be a homage to another horror movie or serial killer? Even the fact the cops with the graduation press conference were really reiterating over and over again the importance of staying safe, I found pretty interesting. I mean, it goes without saying, you've had this hideous murder happen in a town. Obviously, people need to factor in safety and start being a bit more careful. Again, though, I think he's already left. I think he's long gone from Moscow. I think there's plenty of serial killers that are still on the loose. But I think, you know, if this is a reminder to take a few extra precautions, be a bit safer wherever you are in the world, it's not a bad thing. Just put some powder on and then I can read chat again. Really looking forward to our chat tonight, though, Jen, for sure. And also anyone else who's in the chat at the moment, if you're interested in, you know, going down rabbit warrens and research and stuff like that, and if you have time and you feel like going for a bit of a rabbit warren exploration online, and you find things that you think might be interesting as well to discuss using the facts we know, and if there's connections to other horror movies or serial killers, it's still within the theory. Because the whole college kid thing has never, my hinky meter just hasn't responded at all. But in the back of my mind, bit by bit, little things have happened. Little facts have come out in press conferences that when you start piecing what we know together, it seems like a plausible theory. Not saying it is correct, but it's kind of interesting that that's where my brain's going. And it's new to me, like I was saying, I'm not a massive horror movie fan, and I certainly do follow, sounds weird, but serial killers. Especially when you've got ones like Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer who've done interviews and talked about it. And there's plenty of other serial killers that I've listened to interviews as well. They're very full of themselves and like talking about what they did. And the way they're so matter of fact and calm about it, like it's not really freaking them out that they're capable of doing this stuff. That's always fascinated me and horrified me. Interesting you're talking about this. I've wondered about, see, I knew there were plenty of people that would be thinking this. Well, I was hoping. It was a bit of a risk going live. I thought people are going to come in and just tell me I'm absolutely insane, but I feel comforted knowing we are not alone. Staying safe and staying in groups, which was odd. There were 6 people in that home, but I think you meant to pay attention to your surroundings, including other people. Yeah. Yep, be aware of your environment for sure. Yeah, me too. And 80s and 90s were like, movies like The Howling and Poltergeist and stuff like that. They weren't slasher movies. I mean, they might have been, but they weren't my genre for sure. You're an avid horror film buff, blank slate. You're going to be perfect for the chat as well, or panel. If you like jumping up on panels, you're more than welcome to. If you want to add stuff in chat, we can do some quick Googling and talk about it when we're live as well. I definitely think the person's a bit older. Definitely. I do not think a little wimpy, I hate to say it, and I'm not stereotyping all college boys, but I was a college girl. I went to uni. I dated them. A little private school educated university boy studying some sort of humanities is not going to be capable of this. They're just not. They're not going to have the physical strength for starters. And that level of rage and anger. They're not going to have the time to plan something like this methodically, meticulously. I mean, look, never say never, I know. Maybe there's some freakish college kid out there that could pull this shit off. It didn't. My hinky meter did not go down the hoodie guy road at all from the start. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm saying it's unlikely. And I'll stand by that because name one murderer that you know of who killed 4 people minimum in his early 20s. Even Bundy was in his late 20s, I think. I think he was more like 26. Makes more sense. Bit older. Bit more bitter. This person had time to plan and plot. And they crossed every T and I so far because they haven't been caught. Like, they planned it well. And they planned it to get away with it. That whoever did it is not surprised at the moment that the cops don't have a suspect or a person of interest. Not surprised at all because they planned it so thoroughly. This wasn't some slightly disgruntled person who got a bit pissed off that night with one of them and then went into the house and did that. It's just not. Too many things that you would expect in this case, like, say, the blood trail was planned out so that there wasn't one. Spur of the moment wouldn't have even thought about that. If they were that angry that they just wanted to go in and kill someone because they were pissed off with them and something happened to tip them over the edge to want to do it, it all would have happened very quickly. They wouldn't have been meticulously planning how to not leave a blood trail. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't. The whole lost their temper and went nuts, saying if that's the case, they probably would have been caught already because it would have been done in haste and they wouldn't have planned all of it through. Or they would have been inept like Chris Watts, who planned to do it but didn't plan the aftermath. Scream, yeah. Well, Scream was based on another mass murder or serial killer, the Gainesville Ripper. Danny Rowling. Wasn't that funny that earlier in the live I was driving along and I'm like, I've forgotten his surname. And then I was like, I had this vision of Harry Potter and I'm like, why am I thinking of J.K. Rowling? And then his surname's Rowling. Maybe I'm psychic. Look forward to our live for sure. Jen, absolutely. If you are insane, maybe that's why I feel at home here. We're the nut bags. I read someone's post, scared me a bit. It was one person that killed them. There's a lot of energy used. Wouldn't matter how fit they were. Yeah, I know. Mallory said she was there at college when that happened. Oh, what? Richard, sorry, Jenny Rowling? Just see if there's anything else that I wanted to mention. But I think the house number, the 1122, could be a coincidence, but it's kind of weird, right? November 2022 is when the murders happened. Was it that planned out? Or was that just an absolute fluke? Oh, in Florida. Interesting. Scary. We thought from the start that this was a swift and brutal slashy type thing, which explained why there was no noise and why the dog didn't bark and why the housemates down on the bottom floor didn't wake up. I do think this took incredible strength based on the experts saying how much energy it takes just to stab one person, let alone four. Stab or slash. I mean, slashing probably requires even more energy, if you think about it. We know very little about what's inside the crime scene, but we do know that the cops at one point said they believed the house was targeted. Why would they say that? I've talked about with my theory how you can get out of the house without leaving a blood trail. Hey, Xana. Oh, you think they're working on genetic genealogy? I still think they don't have a clue. I think that person's long gone. I don't think they've committed a crime like this before, so their DNA isn't in the databases. And I think they've got the fuck out of Moscow very quickly, probably that night. But yeah, in terms of the getting out without leaving a blood trail, I've explained how you take a bag into that house and you've got like a little coverall all in one, possibly a mask as well, and your feet are enclosed in it too. Do the crimes while you're still in the house, take that gear off, shove it in your bag along with the knife. You've left your boots and your jacket out on the whichever entryway you came in, say the deck. Chuck your gear on and out you go. Got a car down the road to jump into and drive away out of Moscow. See ya. But we'll do a live tonight, a proper one, and we'll start looking at some of these horror films that are connected. And also, I mean, I did go down an unsolved murders that happened on the date the 13th road, and I've ended up reading cases that happened in the States and other parts of the world in the 1800s. And it is the 13th of December here in Australia. Hopefully nothing happens in the US on your 13th. Yeah, it's horrific. My friend who's a Marine, I haven't asked him yet if he'd like to come up on a live and talk about the knife, but he probably will be camera shy. But I'll ask his wife, who's my best friend, and see if he might be able to give some insight into that knife, even just writing it in a message to me that I can show you guys. It is horrific. I just think that my theory, based on the little information we've got at the moment, I think this could be a serial killer in the making, unfortunately. But I think he's also long gone from Moscow. I think he planned to get the fuck out of there very quickly. And it wouldn't have been hard. It's a little town. It doesn't take long to cross a border even to another state. There's a bridge you can go over and you're in Washington. Right. But again, this is just based on the info we know. But I'll do a live tonight. Jen Lou's going to jump up on panel. She's way more into horror movies than I am. But yeah, have a think about how you feel about the cops saying the house was targeted, the 1122 King Road reference. Is that just a massive coincidence or was it deliberate? Don't know. If it wasn't planned, it's another twist in this story, though, that is kind of freaky. I don't think the person had time to slip anyone drugs, even the dog. Didn't need to. Knew how to essentially eradicate people very quickly with that knife, unfortunately. This was in and out. No mucking about. And I do think that Ethan and Xana, Ethan may, like I said, have just gone out to get a glass of water. I don't know if they were necessarily part of the plan. Well, I think his plan was to kill everyone in that house. I don't think the keypads on the doors was part of the plan. I'm the same, Shanna, and this case is a real-life horror movie, and it's got everyone talking for sure. But when you just look at the facts we've got, to me, this is the most plausible theory I've come up with. It's the only thing that's making sense at the moment. I could be way off the mark, but at least my theory is based on the facts only. Speaking of facts, I love the guy's voice on Forensic Files. Yeah, there's an actual episode of Forensic Files of a murder that happened in Tasmania. I couldn't believe it. And the people they interviewed for it, oh my God, it did not paint Tasmania in a good light. I'm going to go and deal with my real life clients and give them legal advice based on the facts of their cases, because that's what I do. And I hope you all have a really lovely night. Have a beautiful day wherever you are. And again, I just want to acknowledge and pay respect to the victims of this horrible real life horror story. Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. Take care, everyone. Thanks for hanging out with me, and hopefully I'll see some of you tonight when we do this live from home and just go through the facts and see how they connect to this theory. To see you all again very soon, and remember, in the meantime, don't get hit by, don't get struck by a smooth criminal.